Do you recognize states 299 to 318?
Yes, I do.
What are they?
These are the photographs that were taken at the time of autopsy.
Of Laken Riley?
Correct.
And her belongings? Or items that came in with her body, sorry.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
The state would, no, do they fairly and accurately depict Laken Riley and her body as you saw it on February 23rd of 2024?
Yes, they do.
State would move to admit states 299 to 318.
No objection.
They're admitted.
And in lieu of publishing them over the Elmo, Your Honor, if you could take those, thank you, for the court. So let's start first with, could you tell the court in what condition did you receive Laken Riley's body?
Laken Riley was received to our office in a body bag with identifying tags on the zippers of the external surface.
And is that what we see in states 299?
Correct.
Okay. And in states 299, do you see that unique case number that you just read to us?
Yes.
States 300, could you tell us what we're looking at there?
Following the photographs that are taken, we'll take as, quote unquote, as is photographs. So as we receive the body, we will take photos how they come in. And that is photos 300 through 302.
So I want to talk to you about the condition of her body. First of all, were her hands bagged?
Yes.
And do you see those bags in states 300?
Yes, and 301.
301. And what other, could you describe her body in terms of how was she clothed and what, if any, other items you saw around her hair?
She came in wearing pants, undergarments, as well as shoes and socks. She had a necklace on her neck as well. There was a hair tie in her hair, as well as admixed leaves and twigs, vegetative debris.
And are those items depicted in states 300? That is the vegetative debris. Do you see it at the top of states 300?
Yes.
In her hair?
Yes.
All right. And then moving to states 302, does that depict her bottom part of her clothing, her leggings, and her shoes?
Correct.
All right. Could you please describe Laken Riley in terms of age, height, and weight?
May I refer to my report for height and weight, just so that I'm accurate? She was 22-year-old female, 64 inches or 5'4", and 143 pounds.
Did you observe any injuries to Laken Riley?
I did.
Can you globally describe them, and then we'll cover them in more detail? Globally describe the injuries that you saw, just in general terms.
So Laken exhibited blunt force head trauma as well as signs of asphyxia.
What is asphyxia?
Asphyxia is essentially the inability to deliver oxygen to your tissues and cells.
And what types of actions can cause asphyxia? Where do you see asphyxial deaths?
Asphyxial deaths can be seen in hangings, which are ligature strangulation. They can be seen in manual strangulation, as well as neck compression, either by somebody using their arm or doing an arm bar or chokehold or something like that.
And at times, as a medical examiner, are you able to determine what type of asphyxia caused or contributed to a victim's death?
In cases where we have good autopsy findings that would allow us to categorize them into one of those areas, we can.
And in this particular case with Laken Riley, were you able to determine what type of asphyxia you saw?
I was not able to categorize it.
So how did you categorize it in your report then, or how did you characterize it?
I just refer to it as asphyxia and not otherwise specified.
So it could be manual strangulation, but you just don't have enough findings to say that.
Correct.
Could be compression?
Correct.
So you told us the global injuries. I want to start first with Laken's face and head, and then move down the rest of her body, if you could.
Okay.
So we're looking at states 303. Could you tell the court what we're looking at there?
303 is what we call our quote-unquote ID shot. So we take this for every case where we put the case number under the individual's face and take this photograph.
Do you see any injuries to Laken's face?
Yes.
What are those injuries? Please, can you describe them for us?
She has a combination of abrasions, which are scrapes, as well as contusions, which is just a fancy medical way of saying a bruise, so bleeding under the skin, as well as lacerations. Lacerations, as opposed to an abrasion just being a scrape of the skin, a laceration is a defect of the skin and the tissue immediately underlying it.
States 304, what are we looking at there?
This is another photograph of her face with a little bit of a closer view, as well as more exposure of the injuries to the left side of her head.
And can you see in States 304 her neck?
Yes.
And did you observe any injuries to her neck? And if you did, could you please describe them for us?
Yes. On external exam, she had approximately 1-inch cluster of small abrasions on the left side of her neck.
And what can cause abrasions?
Abrasions are a form of blunt force trauma.
States 305, what does that depict?
In this photograph, we have shaved away some of the hair on the left side of the scalp so that we can better see this cluster of lacerations that are on the left side of the scalp. In addition to these lacerations, there are associated areas of contusions, which is that red bruising that is around the lacerations, as well as some abrasions associated with them as well.
What is a laceration?
A laceration is a form of blunt force trauma in that the skin and the tissue underneath the skin are separated.
Did you notice any injuries? You told us the lacerations. I'm going to ask you to describe them first. If you could describe for us the most severe injury that you saw to the left side of her head first, and then I'll ask you to describe the other lacerations.
The largest laceration was over 1 inch in greatest dimension, and you can see it associated with a defect of the underlying skull.
And when you say a defect in the underlying skull, what do you mean?
A fracture.
So did she have a skull fracture?
Yes.
How did you describe that skull fracture, or how would you describe it?
It is a complex displaced fracture of the left calvarium.
What does that mean?
It is a segment of her skull on the left side is displaced from its usual anatomic location.
And displaced in what way?
Displaced into the calvarium.
Okay, so into her skull.
Correct.
There is a part of her skull missing that's been displaced inside her head. Is that a way of saying it?
It's there, yeah. It's just displaced. Yep, into the skull.
Oh, into her skull. All right. And you told us how long it was. Is that what you described? In 1 inch plus.
The largest dimension. I could refer my report for the exact. I know it was over 1 inch. It is 1 13/16 of an inch, so just under 2.
And is that the wound that we're talking about, the skull fracture, is that the one in the center of 305, which would be the largest wound that we see in that photograph?
Correct.
And how deep was that wound?
If you are measuring from the outer table of the skull, it was 1/4 of an inch.
And would you expect that wound to cause Laken Riley to bleed?
Yes.
And that wound itself, this skull fracture, is that, or could that be a fatal wound to Laken Riley?
It could be fatal.
Explain to us why and how.
Well, the wound, as you've mentioned, caused a displacement of the skull into the brain. In addition, underneath the wound, there was some subarachnoid hemorrhage. So essentially, there's a coating around the brain. Right under that coating, there was a little bit of hemorrhage associated with it as well. And like was mentioned, there was bleeding under the scalp associated with this injury and associated with that laceration.
And why could that be fatal to a person?
It essentially is causing trauma to the brain.
Did you observe any other lacerations to the left side of her head?
Yes.
How many did you observe?
There were 8 in total.
And if you could go through with us, do we see them in State's Exhibit 305, the others?
Yes.
Okay. And could you describe them as you describe, how would you describe the other 8?
They ranged in size from 1/4 of an inch to the largest wound that was over an inch. Some of them were curvilinear or linear, whereas others had a more irregular shape to them.
What type of, you said the lacerations are blunt force trauma?
Correct.
Is a rock a blunt surface?
It can be, yes.
And are the injuries that you see in States 305 consistent with a rock?
They could be consistent with a rock.
On the left side of her head, we're still on States 305. Could you tell us what, if any, injuries did you observe to her ear on the left side?
She also had a contusion or a bruise to the helix of her ear, as well as an associated abrasion in that area.
And the helix of the ear, could you just tell us for the record, what part of the ear is that?
It's, my apologies, it's the upper earlobe.
Okay, kind of where my hand is right now?
Yes.
All right, on the left upper top of the earlobe. All right. And what type of injury did you say that was?
A contusion with an associated abrasion.
And is a contusion also a way of saying a bruise?
Yes.
All right. And it states 306, if you could flip the photo for us. What are we looking at there in states 306?
This is just another view a little bit further away, showing all the injuries to the left side of her head and neck.
So complete photo of the 8 lacerations that you discussed?
Yes.
States 307. Tell us what we're looking at there.
307 is a closer up view of those injuries to the left scalp.
And 308.
.308 is part of our internal examination. We will reflect the scalp from the head, and this view shows you the hemorrhage on the undersurface of the scalp, as well as a better view of the fracture of the skull.
Of the left side?
Correct.
Did Laken Riley have injuries to the right side of her head?
She did have injuries on the right side as well.
Could you describe those for us, please?
There was some discoloration over the right temporal region, as well as her temporalis muscle, which is the muscle that's kind of on the side of your head under your temple, had a laceration to it. It was hemorrhagic, so it was bleeding, and there was also hemorrhage on the undersurface of the scalp in that region.
What type of injuries were those injuries?
Also blunt force trauma.
What is petechia?
So petechia are very small punctate uniform hemorrhages that can be seen either in the eyes, on the facial skin, in the mouth, in instances of asphyxia.
Did you see petechia at Laken Riley's autopsy?
I did.
Where did you see it? And I have states 309 if that would help you as well, if we want to go to that photo.
There were petechia within both of her eyes, as well as coarser, larger hemorrhages associated with these petechia in her eyes. There were petechia of the skin surrounding her eyes, her periorbital region, as well as a small amount of petechia in the gingival mucosa, which is essentially the gum.
So are those things documented in your photographs that extend all the way to states 315?
Yes.
And is that the petechia you observed on Laken Riley's body?
Yes.
So what causes those types of injuries?
Petechia are a result of increased pressure within the vasculature that causes small vessels to burst and create those tiny pinpoint hemorrhages, and that can be seen in asphyxia.
And do you know how long does it take approximately for someone to be deprived of oxygen before petechia can form?
I could not say with certainty the time.
And the manner in which she obtained the petechia, you've already pretty much told us about. It's asphyxia of some sort, right?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
And it could be manual, it could be compression, like someone sitting on her, is that right?
It's possible either manual strangulation or some sort of compression of the neck or chest.
And it had to be done long enough for her to be deprived of oxygen to her brain. Is that right?
Yes.
And what other injuries did you see to her body?
In addition, there were also abrasions of her torso, her abdomen, as well as abrasions on her left hand and left leg.
Let's talk about her torso. State's Exhibit 316. Do you recognize that photo? And do you see those? Do you see her torso?
Yes.
How would you describe the injuries that we see on the left side of her torso?
These injuries are clusters of linear abrasions that are both parallel to each other as well as intersecting with one another.
And there's a lower one. I want to talk to you about the lowest one that we see in 316, right above the measuring tape that has your unique case number on it. Do you see that injury?
Yes.
How would you describe that injury?
That is also a linear abrasion.
And this might sound like a really dumb question, but by linear, do you mean a line?
Yes.
And could these abrasions be consistent with something like a belt buckle or some kind of metal object?
It's possible.
Would these also be considered blunt force injuries?
Yes.
Would you consider these a brush abrasion? And when I say these, I'm talking about these linear injuries on her torso.
I can't entirely exclude them having a brush component, but they don't appear to be the stereotypical brush abrasions that we can see.
Why not?
The stereotypical brush abrasions will have, and usually will have areas of like a coalescence. So you'll have those linear striation abrasions as well as a larger patch area as well. And I don't see the same features in this.
Are these linear injuries consistent with something like a belt or a key or some object like that?
They could be consistent with an object.
States 317, what are we looking at there?
This is a photograph of her left hand depicting a small.
Is that the red mark that we see above the measuring stick or tape that has your unique case number on it?
Yes.
States 318, what are we looking at there?
Also the left hand, this is showing a linear abrasion on the left pinky.
And these abrasions, are they also a form of blunt force trauma?
Yes.